And if I told you that pizza represented life because it's in the shape of a circle cut into triangles in a square box, which is all three basic shapes put together, you would be in denial. Speaking of denial, if I told you denial was actually in America and it's the Mississippi River, you would, look a little suspicious. Speaking of suspicious, I'm suspicious that they quite literally ask you for your birthday for every single thing because they are using your natal chart against you. Speaking of natal, would you believe me if I told you that your birth certificate and your social security number do not identify you? That's actually your straw man. That's actually the fake you that your parents reported to the United States government so that they could literally have access to govern you. Speaking of government, would you believe me if I actually told you that the government does not govern you, but instead the land does? Think about it. The U.S. is a corporation. It is a business, if you will. America is the land. You follow the law of the land and not the law of the corporation. Speaking of law, do you know that there's a difference between unlawful and illegal? Something that is unlawful goes against the land. It goes against your being. Something that is illegal goes against the statutes that were set forth upon you by the corporation, the government. Speaking of all these terms that I'm throwing at you, did you know that it's very important for you to learn legalese? Yes, legalese. It's a whole different language outside of English. This is how they get you to subject yourself, subject your energy into the system. Speaking of the system, did you know the system actually mirrors the waters? Yeah, that's something called maritime law. You want to know where this originated from? Not the seas here on this physical plane, the seas within your mother. That's why the only place that you're actually from, and I used to say this a lot when I was younger, I'm from Mama, because she literally was the first ship that I arrived in, the mothership. Speaking of the mothership, did you know that there was a plan in place actually called Project Bluebeam, which, a lot of people saw, in action at the Miami Mall incident? That is when they were supposedly testing out how people would react if aliens were to come down using CGI technology, nanoparticles in the air. Speaking of the nanoparticles in the air, is it possible that just like on the show Paradise and in the Truman Show, that those chemtrails or those little, streaks of small white that we see in the sky that eventually burst into big cloud, is it possible that those nanoparticles or that CGI technology is up in there? Or, speaking of the little chemtrails and the stuff that is sprayed above the cities, is it possible that certain cities are constantly sprayed with these chemicals to keep, the people in there in a trance or in a state? As seen in the show Inside Job. I forgot which episode, but it was basically when they went back in time to this town that was centered around the 80s. And they utilized these chemicals that were sprayed in the air to control the people and keep them in that stagnant state. But you know what else was alluded to in that specific episode? The show Stranger Things. Which, by the way, I didn't get past season 1, so don't even, ask me about all that in comments. But it was funny because Stranger Things was actually mimicking, the underworld. And speaking of the underworld, did you know that the land that they call Tartaria or Tartarus in Greek, Roman, back to Egyptian mythology is actually the access point to the inner earth? Speaking of the inner earth, did you know that there were beings that live inside of the inner earth? Yeah, they got you thinking that it's just, magma, core, lava, da 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 da. But if you go back and watch the movie The Core, which again, I will tell you, they put everything in them films, but again, you gotta pay attention because that's programming within itself. Once you get past that magma layer, there is actually an inner part of it. Think of it like a volcano, if you will. Speaking of volcanoes, I suspect that volcanoes erupting and many other natural disasters were actually cover-ups to not only reset the world or society as we know it today, because there's a difference. Society refers to civilization that is created. The world refers to this plane that we live on, which is eternal, just like us, but they don't want you to know that either. But those disasters happen because they are trying to not only reset but cover up for the fact that there are other beings who come in and use this plane as a middle ground. Because think about it, what also lies in the middle of your being, if you know the earth or this plane is just a reflection of us? The heart, right? So doesn't that make earth heart? And if you take earth and rearrange some of the letters, it can spell out heart. But wait, if the earth is the heart, doesn't that mean that there are other planes around it? And if you ever look at the structure of an atom or an atom, doesn't it have a biofield with many different electron valence shells in it? And what is the sun made up of? Electric energy, right? So does that mean the sun is local to the earth? Meaning that the sun revolves around the earth, because that is the sun that is local to the heart. That is the electron that is local to the nucleus. But to the other planes, there are many other electrons flowing around it. Speaking of electrons, the sun is actually made up of electric energy, right? And if the sun is made up of electric energy and we are miniature souls, which soul means sun, doesn't that mean that there is also a sun in the heart as well? In the earth as well? But if it was the opposite, it wouldn't be electric, it would be magnetic, right? So with it being magnetic, that means that it would have to be the opposite of light, which would be dark or black. But because we are electromagnetic beings, we aren't, just black. We're light as well. We have soul, which makes us a light and a dark being, meaning that we are electric and magnetic. Electromagnetic. Wait, as above, so without, right? So if there are electromagnetic beings that hold electric and magnetic energy, there are also beings that don't. But you have people who believe that humans are the only people to exist on this plane, the only persons, the only beings. This is why you must question everything. Don't just go based off of what people tell you. Use your pattern recognition skills and recognize when you are being played. I share, baby.
Looks like you forgot, once again, how powerful you are.